Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another week of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in, and today we should have a fantastic show to start the week. We are going to start off recapping Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals, where the Oilers comprehensively forced a Game 7 in Edmonton. And then we are going to preview that Game 7 happening tonight. Should be a fantastic one. History can be made either way between these two teams, so I'm looking forward to starting the show off with those segments. Then we look at the updated Conn Smythe odds. Should the Oilers win, will Connor McDavid ultimately win or lose, actually? And then the Golden Boot odds for the Euros have been updated. This list is a little bit skeptical, but I am going to give it to you guys, even though there are some names on there that I do not think are getting off on the right foot in this tournament. And we conclude today's show with a very special segment. For the first time in the history of the show, I will be doing a deep dive into a certain player in fantasy football to go over their stats, their career highlights, and also what attributes might make you want to roster them or shy away from them. That player will be named in that segment. But without further ado, let's jump right into the show. Before we begin, I do want to remind you to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, to any show on the network for that matter. Also, if you do feel so inclined, please consider leaving a tip or donation at the link gsmc.cloud. It is a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and ultimately the network as well. So anything you leave there is greatly appreciated. If you want to leave even a question, a comment, or concern based on prior episodes or even a segment that you see today, do consider that as well, and it will be answered at the beginning of the next episode. But without further ado, let's jump right into the show, and we begin today's show with some hockey. Never thought it would get to this point, but yet here we are. We are discussing a Game 6 Oilers win, and now we are looking ahead to a Game 7 tonight. It sure seemed as if this series was dead and buried after Florida went 3-0 up, but it just speaks to the Edmonton Oilers' moxie and heart and desire to win games. They never say die. They have had an incredible record when they have had these consecutive losing streaks, and so it's nothing we shouldn't have expected of them. But let's just jump right into recapping Game 6, and then we are going to preview best two words in sports in Game 7. Starting off with my fantasy stars from Game 6. Again, all Oilers, mainly due to the fact that there was sheer dominance from this squad in Game 6, and Florida just could not cope with it. So Darnell Nurse, there's a guy that we've always talked about on this show as someone who has had his fair share of criticism, but in this game he really stepped up. He had 1 goal, 2 plus-minus, very important as a defender that your plus-minus is positive, and a 6.5 fantasy point score at the end of the day for Darnell Nurse. Another huge factor in tonight's game as well, as he could be tasked as being one of the top line defensemen to close it out for Edmonton. Another player who has had a fantastic role in the series, one of Chris Knoblauch's experimentation kind of guys, in Warren Foegele, had a goal and an assist, a 1 plus-minus and 7 fantasy points. I think tonight he can be a huge factor, mainly due to the reason that Chris Knoblauch needs someone who he can rely on as a guy who can rotate in and out of lines, and that has been Warren Foegele in these playoffs. He can step up to a top line, he can step down to the third line, he's found his home in the second line. So whatever happens with Warren Foegele tonight, he can certainly have either a positive or a negative effect on this Edmonton squad. And last but not least, we have to acknowledge the play, especially in elimination situations, of Stuart Skinner. Only 1 goal against tonight for a sterling .952 save percentage, 8 fantasy points. And Stuart Skinner, yes, he as well as Darnell Nurse has faced a fair share of criticism, but in elimination games, he has had a sterling record. And if it weren't for Connor McDavid, Stuart Skinner would be a shout for the Conn Smythe Trophy, mainly because of the fact that in elimination games, he never says die. He really elevates his game. He knows what's at stake. And so Stuart Skinner needed to be on that Fantasy Stars list. And notice how one player in particular is absent from this list. This is one of the first games ever in the Connor McDavid era where Connor McDavid himself did not register a shot, a point, anything in this game. This goes to show that Edmonton is locked in right now, and they have all the momentum in this series. And that's all you need going into a winner-go-home game, a winner-take-all game on the road, where historically, in the history of North American professional sports, especially in recent memory, road teams have had the benefit of the doubt, and they've won many road games, especially in Game 7s, and so that's something that Edmonton can take. But honestly, right now, I remember earlier in the show when they were down 3-0, me talking about how there's a mental barrier surrounding the distance between these two teams, the longest distance between two teams in Stanley Cup history. And so, Edmonton, that was the key for them. Not only find their game again, get back to what they do best, but also figure out a way on the flights back and forth between Edmonton and Florida to lock into that mindset of, we aren't done yet, guys. Whatever they needed to do, now the mindset has shifted. The Panthers are kind of talking like how the Oilers were when they were down 3-0. They're trying to remain upbeat, but the mood, you can see in the players on the ice, the mood is completely and utterly shifted. Edmonton players just seem so energetic no matter what in every facet of the game, whether they're in the offensive zone or the defensive zone. In every single facet of the game, the Edmonton Oilers just look more aggressive. They look more hungry to win. They look more together as a collective, and that's something we were saying about the Panthers in this series. The Panthers were the more well-rounded team. They were the collective unit that got here centered around a team identity. And we couldn't say the same about the Oilers because they were relying on Connor McDavid to take them to new heights. And now, everyone around McDavid, the fruits of that, especially showing in Game 6, has really elevated their game to prove that Edmonton is never down and out. And I really think that they have a fantastic chance of being yet another road team to go out there and win Game 7 and hoist the Stanley Cup for the first time in over 30 years. Now let's look at the betting odds, because the betting odds for tonight's game show the story a little bit of how this series has shifted. Edmonton right now is at minus 105. Florida's at minus 115. So as you can see, it's really a toss-up. A little bit favored towards Edmonton, even on the road. As always, the total is 5.5. And so, if you are betting on this game, I think the evenness of this game and how bookmakers look at it really helps you in any regard. You could pick either team and be fine with whatever happens. I would personally stick with Edmonton. I think Edmonton right now has all the momentum going forward, and they just look like a team that really is interconnected. In terms of if you're still playing daily fantasy hockey for the last game of the season, here's what you need to know. McDavid, still the highest priced player on the market in terms of budget at 11.6K. Projected to have 19.1 fantasy points, and I could definitely see him doing that. His first ever Game 7 in a Stanley Cup final. Hopefully it's not his last, but it definitely means a lot to a player like him to be in this situation, and I expect him to come out with a bang. In terms of Florida Panthers who really need to step up, I'm looking at Sergei Bobrovsky because he fell off a cliff somewhere along the lines in this series. He's projected to have 12.3 fantasy points and he goes for 9.8K tonight on the market. But Sergei Bobrovsky definitely needs to find a way to find a way back into the series through his goalkeeping or have his defensive structure kind of set up in front of him. I think that Sergei Bobrovsky definitely needs to have a huge Game 7 if Florida had to have any hopes of winning this series. And then another Oiler who I'm really looking at to step up because he is one of the longest tenured Oilers since before McDavid and Draisaitl were even here. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, he has seen the journey. He knows how long it took to get to this point from all the different teammates he's ever had. Now here he is in a winner-take-all Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals, I think he's going to have a huge game. He is the glue that holds this Edmonton Oilers team together due to his longevity in this squad. And so he's projected to have 7.7 fantasy points, and he will go for 7.6K. And then last but not least, another Florida Panther who has come under his heavy share of criticism, Carter Verhaeghe. He looked very lost in Game 6. Whenever he picked up the puck behind the net, that's how the Panthers generated a lot of their looks on goal, picking the puck up from behind the net, passing them back out to the center of the ice. Carter Verhaeghe is often tasked with that. He just looked lost with the puck. He kept on losing the puck in dangerous situations for Florida. And he's held scoreless for these past couple of games. And I think that in order for him to be seen as yet another clutch playoff performer, especially for a Florida team that just relies on a collective, he definitely needs to be one of the guys who says, hey, I'm going to take this game over. He's projected to go for 8.8 fantasy points, and he goes for 8K on the market. And so Carter Verhaeghe is someone I'm really, really looking at through a lens for the Florida Panthers, because they definitely need someone who can distribute the puck, who's not scared of Oilers penalty kill, because I guarantee you, every single man advantage or shorthanded position the Oilers find themselves in, they are going to be very aggressive. That's not changing. The Oilers' power play and penalty kill has been absolutely outstanding, not just throughout the postseason, but in the past 3 games to even get to this point. So they need to find someone to break that Oilers' success up. They need someone who can really help facilitate what the Florida Panthers' offensive game plan is, and I think that should be Carter Verhaeghe. But overall, looking at this game, I said the Oilers would win in 6, and I'm not changing my prediction now that it's going to 7 games. I think the Edmonton Oilers will win this game. They just look like the better team. When all is said and done, when we look back at the series, whoever wins tonight, they'll make history. Florida's either going to be looking at a first franchise Stanley Cup, and the Edmonton Oilers are looking to be the first team since World War II era to be down 3-0 and win the Cup. And so I just think right now Edmonton is on the right side of history. They have a lot going for them in this game. They seem to have figured out how to contain their anxiety or their fears throughout the flights. They've changed to a mindset of positivity, and they look like on the ice. And so I'm really looking forward to this Game 7. But that should just about do it for this Panthers-Oilers Stanley Cup Madness recap/preview. Coming up next, we're going to be looking at the updated Conn Smythe odds. When all is said and done, who will take home the coveted Conn Smythe trophy? We will be right back with that segment sticking in the hockey world.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.